I am unashamed. What about you?
Things that popped into your head.
Yeah, these were just
driving down the
musings.
It's just things that people say. All these people, why is it an epidemic of men running around in the United States trying to convince me they're a woman?
Or
I said, do you have a womb? And that children come from women. Now, once medical technology may work on it, and they may get it coming out of a man, but so far, I don't think it's going to happen. Therefore,
Doubtful.
live. Second, everybody sins. We all know that. 3, everybody physically dies. 4, whether they like it or not, they're forced to agree that everybody counts time by Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah, I've had people that disagree with you on that.
I know they will.
But then they say, what time is it?
What year is it?
Or they have a watch, or it's on their phone.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, yeah, but this is a different. I don't observe that time.
Yeah.
So
what do you say, Dad? So instead of calling it BC and AD, they say CE. Common era.
Common era, and when you ask them, but when did your common era begin? They said, when y'all say Jesus showed up. I'm like, yeah. 5, all empires collapse, which we shouldn't be running and like we're beating the air.
Yeah.
All of them before us, Al. Every one of them has collapsed.
Yep.
Why do you think that is?
It's a great question. I think it when it's a human construct was not to be eternal. That's why you see you wouldn't believe the verses that the kingdom we're a member of, the empire, if you want to call it that, it'll never be destroyed.
Right.
Daniel said all of them come and go. He basically said it, but a lot of verses about that. And finally, all human beings can receive life and immortality, even with all these problems.
Yeah.
You say, all human beings can get out of here alive. For God so loved the world, he sent his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him won't perish, but have eternal life.
Right.
Well, so the promise is made there, immortality, if you want it. But it only comes to one person. But it is the one you're counting time by. That kind of reminds you that he was here.
So is this what you shared in Beaumont when you were? Because last time,
basically, I said that.
Yeah, last time we were.
I had it at first.
Recorded.
Everybody sins, everybody dies, and and God's offering them a chance to get out of here. But then I just stretched it a little bit, and other things kind of come in.
A lot
there.
of people became Christians, right? I heard like 100 people or something like that. It was
85.
Yeah,
something
pretty exciting.
probably more to come.
Ben was telling me about it. He was your travel mate. So, Jace, you were on the road too. Where'd you go?
Well, I went to Austin, but and I figured out the bat caper. Look, I had more people on my way to Austin.
This bat thing is just not going away.
Look, I had people because I have a different truck now. You figure, people wouldn't know it's me.
And I get totally thrown off because I pulled in my driveway the other day, and your old truck is there. Of course, it was shiny. I'd never seen it so shiny, and I was like, "Oh, Jace is here." So I walk in the house. I'm looking around for you. You weren't there, but the guy, I guess you sold it to Phil.
I sold it to the guy who was on Duck Dynasty as
McMillan the villain.
McMillan the villain.
Well, now I've heard numerous reports back on the bats that I've heard them. They said, "Oh, we had them hundreds."
Yeah, I think there was a bat movement. But what I was going to say is when I was driving, people would roll down the window and say, "Watch out for those bats!" Ha ha! I mean, it was like at the gas station. It was like, "You sure you hadn't been bit by a bat?" I'm like, "What's going on here? This story
When
has
a
got
bat
legs."
bares their teeth at you, one of these little fruit bats. If one lights within 3 feet of you, this hasn't happened but one time to me. When I look down at the bat, he's inside the vehicle. He's in my vehicle, and I look down at him, and he bared his teeth. It was one mean-looking little critter.
For y'all listening,
I mean, he
wish
had
y'all
like
could have
teeth on
seen
him that he could tear meat with. I mean, it was.
Phil's bat impersonation was priceless. So here's what happened.
That's why you need to watch Unashamed, just for that facial expression.
We're rambling, but so I'm fixing to leave to go to Austin. It was actually last week after we did the podcast. I got some plumbing issues. So the only bathroom that I could use, because I had got the plumber lined up, because I'm like, I'm going to be in Austin, because, my house is old and the pipes are old. And no matter what I do, plumbing issue, ever since I've lived there. So I have an outdoor, facility down there.
Like an outhouse?
Pretty much. It is pretty much an outhouse. Look, nobody knows it.
Way above the outhouse I saw as a boy. Trust me.
The good thing about the outhouse is there's not a lot of complicated plumbing.
I have a secret outhouse. It's kind of quite comical. So I'm going down to the secret outhouse, and I'm looking up, and I noticed that my daughter's door, because I've been the only one there for a week during the bat caper, it's wide open. Of course, it's pouring down rain at the moment. And I thought, that's weird. So, because she has a little balcony, our house is a 2-story old house. Well, she's on the upstairs.
Yeah.
And so.
And you don't go up there much.
Why would I ever be? And there's nobody here.
Right.
But what had happened during the bat fight, the 48-hour encounter, of which no bats were injured, I'm legal. I don't think they can get you for
Was there a law against killing bats?
The federal government protects them. I said that. Look, in our society, if someone breaks into your house, you can shoot them. If a bat breaks into your house,
nope.
You have to leave. So that's why we're in Romans 1. I'm like,
what is wrong with this?
Jase, I think someone gave you some bad information, son. I don't.
Phil, there's a term that you're not familiar with that everybody else is. Google it. You basically will see what I just described.
I'm not going to Google it.
Yeah.
Just the concept of Googling anything. Think about it, Jase.
So here's what happened. During the 48-hour encounter, I opened the outside doors, but not that door, because that door I never thought about upstairs, and I closed all the interior doors. So when the fight happened, I went up there and closed her door real quick, because I didn't want them to scatter throughout each room and be battling this for the rest of my life at this house. So I also Googled that. They had a list of suggestions when you have a bat in your house, and some of them were good.
Was it like the bear suggestion?
The guy that told me his story, he said his family members finally they looked up into the attic, and you've seen these cave pictures where they're hanging. Yeah. He said, all of the whole thing, they were just hanging there by the hundreds.
Well, that's why I'm telling you, when I had the pet detective come and scope out my place, he's like, I don't smell the bat infestation, nor do I see them. So it wasn't making sense to me. I was like, he's like,
so he can smell them?
I didn't tell you that?
No. I missed I was not.
Oh, you weren't here. I told that.
Okay.
But he was like, they're not here because I don't smell them.
Did he look like Jim Carrey?
He acted like Jim Carrey.
Excuse me, sir.
90% of what he said, I had no idea what he was talking about. He started talking about bat tendencies and the kinds we got. This who knows?
Jase, you got to remember, you don't find a Batman on every street corner.
He's Batman. Which I think that's what happened is we come up with these silly movies, and some of these people, they don't think it's real, but they become enamored with like being Batman.
Yeah.
And so in their mind, they're like, well, I can't be Batman because I can't get the supernatural powers, but I could be a Batman.
Because he was just rich with a lot of really cool toys. He didn't really have superpowers.
No, but this guy just wants to be a bat. Literally, he wants to go look at and help people deal with bats.
Yeah, I got you.
But he came across as like he had he was like, I'm Batman.
I don't know how many people would actually utilize that particular skill set, but
well, he's trying to make a living from it. So anyway, I concluded, I got to thinking, here's what happened. I believe that door was open, the outside door, no doubt about that. And I believe these bats, I guess they, most of the time I just see one bat flying around. I just think a small colony of bats flew in that door, came round the corner, down the stairs. But when they saw the fireplace, they thought, oh, here's a nice cave. I really believe that's what happened. And they're like, let's live here. And so that makes more sense because I'd never seen one before.
Right.
There's because the actual fireplace chimney has a grating over it.
Right.
You were like, put the grating on. It already has one. They didn't come down that chimney. But when I saw one stuck in the crack of a wall, I think he was just trying to get in the wall instead of coming out of it.
Yeah.
And so,
well, everybody that emailed me about your problems said the same thing. You got to find out where they're coming in. And
yeah, well, they came in my daughter's door. And then I closed her interior door, so then they couldn't get out the way they came. So I think that's what led to it being such a long process. And then there was 3 the second night that they just weren't going to leave. They said, we're staying right here. Because that's when I told you I flicked the one off the rock. Well, he just like went down to the ground. He wouldn't even fly. He's like, I'm not leaving. This is home now.
It's almost like they understand you can't kill them too. They know they're protected. How do they know? It's
like what you do with any animal when you protect them, and that to that degree, they kind of become domesticated where they're not. They're wild, but they're not as scared as humans
as they should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what I don't like. I mean, that's why I'm not a big fan of zoos. I've told you that before. I don't like I like everything just roaming free, and we're at the top.
Yeah.
So we solved that problem. When I got back, I saw no bats, so I feel pretty good about it. I mean, I actually need them now because when I left those doors open in Louisiana, when it's 75 degrees at night for 2 or 3 days, I have quite the insect problem in my house that everything came inside. So, but Missy said, I'm not coming back to that house unless someone inspects it.
You got a dangerous situation now because if you're infested in your home here, the wife is going to want to make her home elsewhere.
Yeah, when I was
the infestations.
When I was telling her all this, she was just like, I can't go back. So I don't know what we're gonna do. We'll have to deal with that. But the actual trip was amazing. She spoke one of the local churches. I say local, it's 20 minutes probably from where we are in Austin. They had my wife come in and talk to the ladies on a Thursday night, and I had the men on Saturday night. And I was like, where have you people been? Because in Austin, I'm in the middle of it. Let's face it, it leans. It has left tendencies.
It's leaning pretty
But
heavy.
I got out here, and it was just kind of a country church, and people, they're like, what I told them was, I said, well, I finally found some weirdos who remind me of me. So we had a good worship time, and I shared Jesus, and they were a raucous, fired up crowd. And
I noticed the same thing. Let's take a break. I noticed the same thing. So I told you last week I was in California, and it was the largest gathering in the county. Of course, it was outside to fit in still you got all the hoops you got to jump through, especially out there. But there were about 600 people underneath this big tent, and Lisa and I spoke. But they were so excited to be there. But it's just because people hadn't been together much, so they're excited about doing it. And then we did one in North Carolina, in Asheboro, for a pregnancy center. Same thing outside. It was at a big church camp, and there was about almost 550 there. But same deal. They were just, and of course, as a speaker, it's so engaging when they're really into what you're doing. I mean, it makes it exciting.
This wasn't a large crowd, but their building was real tiny, and I mean, it was couldn't anybody else get in.
Yeah,
but I'm saying maximum capacity might have been 100. I mean, it was just a little small, church, just in the middle of nowhere, really. I mean, probably 20 miles from Austin, but it was a good experience. So then, that night, Zach Williams and Mac Powell and this group came. They were doing a concert in Austin. Well, they came through here a couple weeks ago in Louisiana, and we met them at Duck Commander. I told about that. We ate crawfish with them.
Right.
But I've been knowing Mac Powell for years.
He's good.
On
He's
third day.
Great dude.
So then we went to the concert. I literally left my event and I went there. It was at an outdoor amphitheater, and they did the concert in parking lots all across the country. But in this one, it was actually at a church building where we visited a couple times, Missy and I, and really like it. So that was awesome because it was packed. I was surprised because, I mean, I told you about some of my experiences in Austin. There's people hollering across the parking lots, wear your mask. Because I thought there's nobody going to be here. I mean, we're still in that mode, but not true. And so that was awesome. I mean, just worshiping on a Saturday night.
So they simulcast it to other places. That's how so other people were experiencing.
I think they were doing that, but on this one, you could come.
Yeah.
He said this is our first crowd arena concert.
Yeah.
Zach said that. And so I missed I got there when Zach started, but I'm going to tell you something. When you just get finished, because I think I shared an hour at this event, because I mean, they were hollering on my event. And, I mean, it was just
it was an hour?
1 hour.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. So Dad, at the event I was at in Asheboro, they had a cardboard cutout, life-size cardboard cutout of you and Mom. And so they had it set up to the side like a photo. So people, when they were getting there, they were going over and taking their picture with you and Mom. So it was funny. So I was like, well, Mom and Dad made it, so I was speaking, so every once in a while I just refer to you, to the cardboard cutout of you. I was like, what do you think about that, Dad? Of course, it got a few laughs. I thought it was pretty funny. But it was just,
Was that because of the coronavirus? We now take pictures of cardboard cutouts?
I don't know what their thinking was, but it worked out pretty well. By the way, so the two events we did, which are pro-life, they're pregnancy centers, raised between the two events, they raised almost $500,000, to go, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
So I want to mention a couple of things. One, this week, there's a new I Am Second premiere. Mom and Dad, Lisa and I, and then Phyllis, her story is going to be featured on I Am Second. So if you go to iamsecond.com, you can see the series. They're rolling it out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week. So you may want to check that out. It's pretty powerful. You watched the first one last night.
Yeah, they showed it to me last night.
And so it's good stuff. And also, Dad has a new book it's called Your Daily Fill, 100 Days of Truth and Freedom to Heal America's Soul. And this is an exclusive Walmart deal. So you can only get these at Walmart, Dad. And that's going to be June 1st. They told me that. Yeah, June 1st is when that's going to release. So we're excited about that. And we got another book, Uncanceled, that we'll tell you more about
Common
later.
Sense. There it is. Common Sense.
Common sense is something that's lost, right? So yes.
Sound practical judgment. Common sense. I looked it up.
Yeah.
That's the dictionary. That's the dictionary's meaning of it.
Which is interesting because we're in Romans, and one of the words that Paul uses in verse 31 of chapter 1 is the word senseless.
Yep.
To describe sort of what happens when you don't have this, relationship with God.
That is correct.
So I thought I'd talk a little bit about my sermon yesterday, Jay. So I preached.
Loved it.
Yeah.
I listened to it on the way back.
Because I missed this when you guys did chapter 1 was when Zach was on the podcast hosting, because we were traveling from California to North Carolina. But I wanted to mention a little bit from the sermon because I thought there were a couple of interesting things we could sort of recap before we move on to the next two. So the way I described it, Dad, was is basically, in John 14, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father except through me, what you just described earlier in your list. So there's an idea from Matthew 7 that Jesus is his lane, his road is narrow. And I kind of described it as a sort of like a country lane somewhere that you have to look for, like if you were trying to find a little cut through somewhere.
One person out of billions.
Right. I mean, so Oprah Winfrey, I mentioned her yesterday in my sermon. Her view, she's now kind of a prophetess in our culture. People look to her for spiritual guidance. She said that she views salvation as a mountain, and all roads lead to the top, meaning to be saved. So no matter what group you're with, no matter who you believe in, no matter what your truth is, it's all going to lead you to this, place of paradise.
Which is where exactly?
Huh?
Which is where?
I don't know. I mean, that's her description of it. But I just thought to myself, when you read what Jesus said, it's like, that's totally wrong.
What does she mean, paradise here?
Maybe. I don't know. I haven't heard a lot of theology, just kind of the glowing, but I think it's indicative of what people view now. Everybody wants everybody to be good. And you've got your truth, whatever that is. You believe whatever you want to believe.
A lot of roads going up the mountain, but Jesus just said just two. One's wide,
that's right.
One's narrow.
Exactly.
He actually brought that because you didn't hear his sermon. That was part of your sermon.
That was my Matthew 7. Yeah. That's exactly right. Because here's the way I described it. So what Paul is describing in Romans 1, 18 to 32, is the broad way to destruction.
You are correct.
Right? And so the way I see it, the way he lays it out, there's 3 lanes. And the first one is just pure depravity. People without excuse because of what's been made, right?
And what is your definition of depravity for people who are maybe listening for the first time? We need a definition of that. You may look it up.
Yeah, look it up.
What would y'all say?
I would say it's spelled out a little further down. Start with Romans 1:28, and you get down toward the end. It says they disobey their parents. They invent ways of doing evil. Yep. They are faithless, senseless, heartless.
All right, here, I got the definition. The quality or state of being corrupt, evil, or perverted.
Yep.
Well, you read that again?
The quality or state of being corrupt, evil, or perverted. You going with that?
That's
or
pretty
do you
good.
Look another one?
That's pretty good.
Because this, somebody put that in here. It's not Bible.
Yeah,
but that's a pretty good description.
I think someone I can't think of his name, the old guy, the preacher from Virginia, but he was identifying, he said it just looked like when you have a lot of immorality. I brought the CDC's figures back up just off of the top of my head here, all you listeners. It's 2021 now. In 2014, I don't have an update in the last 6 years to say whether this went up or down. I'm guessing this is information from the Center for Disease Control. Annual new infections of all kinds of sexually transmitted diseases. I mean, the list goes on and on. Syphilis, gonorrhea, hepatitis, HIV, chlamydia, trichomoniasis, HSV2, HPV. You start adding them all up.
A lot of letters.
Yeah. Annual new infections. It's a scary thing. Argue with the CDC if you want to. Check in with them, and they might have said, no, just keep breeding everything out there. You can get your hands on. It won't hurt you. Annual new infections, 20 million. Total infections, are y'all ready? Look around in the room, because this is 1 out of 3. 110 million prevalence, total infections, according to the CDC. The last time I did this, it was at the Republican.
It was CPAC.
It was CPAC, and I gave them this info just to let them know we really have some troublesome times here. We're going to have to face them. And they all started saying that he's a complete idiot. What is he talking about? I'm like, no, the CDC. Oh, by the way, the total medical cost in 2014 was $16 billion. It has risen now. Since that time, by the way, 658,507 have died in these United States of America. Most of it's HIV. I'm just saying.
Hang on, Dan. Let's take a break. So, Jace, what's your favorite piece of furniture in your house?
Couch.
I knew it. I mean, you could have said anything, but I knew you were going to say couch. We didn't plan that.
You can sit on it. You can sleep on it. You can use it as protection.
Chase has this little alcove with this couch and all this things within reach, and as well as the dogs. Well, one of the couches that we love is from our company Helix. They have a new company they launched called Allform, ALLFORM, and they make really comfortable, customized sofas. I have one in my house and love it. So if you're like Jace and you like your couch, you may want to check these guys out. They're also going to give you 100 days to decide if you want to keep it. That's more than 3 months. You get a full refund if you don't like it, but trust me, you're going to like it. Jace, they have a forever warranty. So there's pretty good.
Couches in heaven.
So to find your perfect sofa, check out allform.com/unashamed. That's allform.com/unashamed. You get 20% off your order just for being a listener from Unashamed. So check them out.
Women exchange natural relations for unnatural ones. We're in the book of Romans. I'm reading from the book of Romans. Their women exchange natural relations for unnatural ones. Figure it out. The men also abandoned natural relations with women and were inflamed with lust for one another. See any of that going on in America and across the world?
Well, that was
men committed indecent acts with other men and received in themselves the due penalty for their perversion. Somebody brought this up years ago, and he was laughed out of town when he said, it's almost like disease. It causes disease. It spreads disease. I'm reading that. I'm just a C+ man, but so get the smartest people on the earth. I would just have them read what happens when sex begins to be everybody's breathing, the orgasm becomes the number one thing in their life. I'm reading Romans chapter 1 about women who do that and men who do that, not good. And the next statement is, furthermore, since they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, he gives them over to a depraved mind. What'd you say depraved was?
Evil. Corrupt, evil, or perverted. Phil,
if you can't see it running around in front of you, I don't know what to tell you.
But your point is noted because God introduced marriage. Matthew 19, Jesus defined it. And so
my point was that because he starts out this in 18 saying the wrath of God is being revealed, that the wrath of God happens when you don't live by the will of God, what he wants for you. So it's not like he's in heaven and he's like, these people, I'm just, rained out with that. That's the way we view it, especially people that don't even not sure who he is. But it's not that way at all. Your lifestyle is what produces wrath or not. It's like having a marriage where people don't, get along at all or work on getting along. It's a very wrathful, vengeful situation. Yeah. I mean, it's a battle.
Well, I think the people don't believe. They'll say, yeah, but why do bad things? They always come in there with bad things happen to, good people or the innocent. Because they're trying to excuse, which was one of his points that led to this, was that when he says, since the creation of the world, in Romans 1:20, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. The implication of that is there's a lot of excuses that come up which produce this lifestyle.
Right.
That is correct.
Most people go to the lifestyle, and you accurately read it, and he put it, but it was like he tells you how this happened. Because you think about it, there's got to be a way to excuse.
Well, think about what are some of the excuses. I was thinking of one that I didn't mention this in my sermon yesterday, but one excuse that I hear all the time is, well, I don't believe necessarily in God or the Bible. I mean, Christians are hypocrites. Like, You people
I think that's top 10.
I mean,
top 10 excuse is
you're not. How can you tell me? Because you're not perfect.
I think another one is one I mentioned is that, well, why do bad things happen to the innocent? I think I would say probably the number one excuse for why people do not surrender to God is they say, well, I'll do that later.
Yeah. Right.
Because really, most people are not out there walking around saying, there's a hell and I'm going there for eternity. I'm doomed. They're just not, there's a few, but I would say most people have something worked out. Even like, I mean, you brought up the Oprah analogy, all roads are leading to paradise. We're not real sure where that is or how it happened or when it will occur. But I also think another factor to this is when he says, for although, where's that? Verse 22, although they claimed to be wise, they became fools. I think that goes in with the excuses because most people have it worked out. That is the excuse.
Yep.
So they're like, just think of our education system. They'll go on about string theories and, how we got here. It's all this complicated mumbo jumbo. So they're claiming to be wise, but they're fools because where does the road lead?
Yeah.
So you're saying, just think about our education system in that light. You're basically saying that we came from nothing. No intellectual maker, no being out there that. So would that mean we came from stupidity, foolishness, nothing?
Yeah.
And now we're smart? And my point is, he basically said, y'all are smart idiots.
Right.
You claim to be wise, but you're fools. Just like that. Where all roads lead to the top of the mountain in the paradise. Well, where is that? Well, I don't know. Oh, I thought that sounded smart, but now it's sounding kind of dumb. When are we going? Have no idea. What is that after we die? Not sure.
Yeah.
So you're a smart idiot. I think that's what he's saying.
It is. Let's take another break. So one of the things I look forward to, Jace, especially now that springtime is here, because I like to be outdoors. One of our sponsors is a group called Bespoke Post, and they send you this little box of goodies, and they call it the Box of Awesome, which is an awesome name for the stuff you get. And basically, they're going to give you, whatever this kind of stuff you like. Some of it's maybe style and grooming, it could be barware, could be cooking tools, outdoor gear. So what you do is to get started, you take a quiz at boxofawesome.com, and they're going to pick out the stuff you like. But it's a little surprise that shows up every month. I love it when mine comes in. They release a new box every month. It's got a lot of different categories in it. It's free to sign up. You can skip a month or cancel anytime. Each box costs $45, but it has $70 worth of gear, so it's also a good deal. You get 20% off your first monthly box when you sign up at boxofawesome.com. Enter the code PHIL at checkout. Boxofawesome.com, code PHIL for 20% off your first box. So I mentioned yesterday that another excuse could be for people is Darwinism, which is kind of ironic that a man, now it's been 75 years ago, came up with a theory about how we got here, how we actually physically got here, but said in his book, now look, this is just a theory. So this could all be proven wrong at any point, just so you know.
Yeah.
And yet all these years later, people cling to it that basically we came from nothing and we just showed up. Somehow the primordial soup was already there.
And we go back to the nothing.
Yeah. That's right.
Before we arrived in our mother's womb, just not much more than a speck, little blob like this, little bitty thing. Look under a microscope, it just looks like a little blob. Then the thing starts to grow
Yeah.
And little arms and little legs, starting the head ends up on top of you. You're like, whoa, here, whoa, whoa, whoa. So you literally, before that happened in your mother's womb, the sperm and the embryo,
right.
before that started, you didn't exist. You didn't take up space of any kind.
Right.
To take that, whatever process you want to call it, I don't even know what you would call that process, and it begins to just develop into a human being. You're like, and then he gets out and looks around, and he's thinking, where did this come from? Where did I come from?
Yeah.
Which is so...
Because you came from nothing, and so what's the explanation? You say, well, you're just a glob of molecules. You started in the ocean. He said, started in the what? In the ocean.
I'm not... they say that. I don't know where the ocean come from.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, and here you are, then you run up on things that you feel guilty about for some reason. You felt guilty and like that, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Going all the way back to taking a club and beating somebody's head off with a rock or whatever. You said, man, so here comes murder. We weren't here long. There wasn't before of us, and we're already murdering each other. Adam, Eve, and then Cain and Abel. And we have our first murder. You're like, well, good night. There's not before of you.
Which I think that's another excuse. They're like, what? I'm not doing this because the evil, in the world, there can't be a God. And so people say use that as an excuse.
Well, I mean, good and evil, creativity, artistic abilities. How does all that evolve? And when you look at other species and they're just, doing their thing. So, I mean,
which is the point.
Yeah.
How did all that intelligence come from nothing?
Right.
That one statement that says that although they claim to be wise, they became fools. It just doesn't add up. I think that's why Paul made that statement. Based on the invisible qualities of God, of what you observe, there's no excuse.
No excuse.
Because whatever your philosophy is without God, it's going to become foolish because it doesn't answer life's biggest problems, mysteries, and destinies. It's just not there.
There was a young man yesterday that attended when I preached the sermon, and he was obviously intelligent. He came down. He said, I just, for the first time in my life, I've been seeking. I'm searching, for something. He's asked me, he said, do you study philosophy? I said, no, not really. I said, I have, read some philosophers, but no, I pretty much stick to what I shared this morning. He said, well, I feel like I need to talk more about this. I said, oh, you do. A lot more. But he looked like he was in his late 20s. He said, I've spent most of my life being an atheist. But for the first time, I'm starting to. And then he was there to hear this sermon yesterday, which was, great for him because the picture is that you can be an atheist. You can try to reason to yourself there is no God, but you're going to wind up in a bad way because this is what happens to people without God. I mean, it naturally brings that out, and they're not. So there is no excuse.
Yeah. When I look back on my own life, I was talking to Zach Williams after his concert. We went backstage. We were going to play cards, but after I got to quizzing these boys, and I thought, they just kind of wanted to social. I thought they were, we were fixed to have a game here, but Missy scared them, and she's like, you don't want to play him, and it's like,
remember, I said, it's not gambling if you can't lose.
Well, I just said, look, just because you sing about Jesus, which I love, that doesn't mean I won't take your money quick. So I think that scared them. But you know what? We ended up just talking about how we could get Jesus to the world. And because I thought, I was at an event, they're singing, about Jesus. We're doing the same thing here. We're trying to make the world a better place. But my point is, he said something in his concert, and we talked about it. He was like, when he was 20, because he was raised in the church, and it's always interesting hearing people's stories. And now you're looking at him thinking, boy, this guy's, rocking and rolling. I mean, he just won a Grammy Award, was singing with Dolly Parton of all people on an awesome song about There Was Jesus. In amongst, when he looked back in his life, he saw these moments that even though he was a million miles away, he was like, he was there the whole time. It's like a great song that tries to define one of my favorite verses in the Bible, which is Hebrews 13:8. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. It just doesn't change. You change. You go off the deep end, get into all this kind of activity that we're reading about. But when you look back on it, you're like, he was still there offering all the solutions and all the answers. But what he said when he was 20, his dad tried to get him to go to a Christian concert. And he's like, I don't want to be there. He had just, and his excuse, which is why I'm bringing this up, was kind of the same thing I felt when I was a teenager. I looked at Christian people as just too cheesy, too square. I'm like, I think the flaws in our groups that meet, like, put on your best, go to church, act a certain way, but then the hypocrisy of the real life outside those walls made me think, these people, I don't want to be hooked up with that bunch. But that was my excuse for not coming, immediately to Christ. I was kind of hiding behind that. But when he said that, here he is now 20 years later. He's like, when I went off and toured, had a rock band and went out, and he kind of told this in the concert and just doing the things in this list here. He's like, I got back and I'm like, I'm looking at my family, I'm looking at my life, and he's just like, I'm just lost. He said, I literally just drove myself into the bottomless pit. And he's like, I just saw my family and I hit my knees and I thought, I'm not doing this anymore. Yeah. And so in a weird turn of events, the only person he would listen to, because he just tried to purge all the bad influence, was Mac Powell from Third Day, because it had the same vibe of music. He's like, well, he was close to Leonard Skinner, which was the first. Mac Powell's the first contemporary Christian group I listened to, for the same reason. I was like, I can't deal with cheesy church music, But when I heard Mac Powell and Third Day, I was like, wow, that's pretty good there. Mm-hmm. So now here he is 20 years later. He's the guy that didn't want to be at the concert, and he's with Mac Powell. They're together singing, about Jesus to people. And people in the audience have their kids who don't want to be there. It's like the same cycle. We were talking about that backstage, and he's like, that's why we do this.
That's right. Expose them something different. Let's take a last break. So you're right, Jase. I think when we look at our own lives, you can see this. And in that last little section there, we mentioned senseless. I think those are progressive ideas, senseless to faithless. Because when you lose your sensibility, and I described yesterday the prodigal son. Remember when he went off and he's living this terrible life? He's practicing just what this list says. Jesus describes him, and it said he's sitting in the pig pen and he's eating with pigs. He's literally fighting pigs over what's in the trough, and he realized, you know what? This is not good. Like the life I had back home wasn't near like this. And instead he came to his senses. And so it's always made me think about that you can get in such a bad way. You just realize it.
But y'all answer one little thing before you. Here's what stands out about that complete first chapter. And Jase, you feel free to expound on this. Verse 32, after this brutal list of a depraved mind, they become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, depravity. They're full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice, gossip, slanderers, God, haters. It's the description of a human being here in Romans chapter 1 is unbelievably brutal. Here's what I'm trying to figure out. I'll give you the first one, then the second one. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. Now, that's one, the Apostle Paul said, you read this list, you say, surely these people They just don't know any better. The Apostle Paul said, oh, no, they know better. The other one is they suppressed the truth. What Jase was reading made it plain to them since the creation of the world. Although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and they began to worship everything but God. But it says twice, they know better.
Yeah.
Well,
Deep in their psyche. So some college professor of the day said, I want an essay written on Phil Robertson's thinking when it comes to same-sex couples. I want to hear his views.
You made a college class.
He said the one of the kids in the class called Miss Kaya and said, this professor wants to write what your husband's views are on homosexual behavior.
I didn't realize that your opinions now are part of higher learning.
So I don't know whether he was saying we need to find out what Romans 1 says about it, or what.
Well,
because my views don't amount to doodly squat. These texts I'm reading, I said they were written a long time ago, 2,000 years in the mid 50s, Al. And you read that description of the human race, it is scary how nothing has changed.
That's a good point.
From then to now. I'm like, whoa, here. Because it seems too brutal. You say, well, surely he wasn't speaking to us. I'm like, look around, dude. So,
well, I think he was saying, to answer your question.
How do you, if they know better, why do they do it? That's my question.
Well, I think that's why when Al brought up the senseless, to go back to the prodigal son, in his mind, he thought, give me, I want my share of the estate. I mean, he wanted money, and he wanted friends, and he wanted this lifestyle. But it all started in his mind. And to quote a verse, Colossians 1:21, it says, once you were alienated from God and were enemies in your minds.
Mm-hmm.
Now it says, because of your evil behavior. So when you think about, we're all created by God. He's given us these measures that lead us to him. Because we just read it. All men are without excuse. There's something about looking around. There's a thought in people's mind, somebody made this. So you have to suppress that. Then there's a thought of, oh, this is wrong. Those two things, having an idea of right and wrong and having an idea that someone created this.
Where did your knowledge of right and wrong would be a question. Where did it come from?
Well, where did your knowledge of someone created this
I know when I do wrong. Do you know when you do wrong?
Absolutely, and always have. But another interesting point is Paul says that if you try to worship something on this earth that's not the creator that made the earth, you're always going to wind up in a bad situation, which is what they were doing. So they replaced God with all these, reptiles and birds and whatever. And I said yesterday, when I was in California, I was listening to some of the commercials. About every third commercial, I'm just listening to the radio, and about every third one was about some sort of environmental cause, the climate change. It was just over and over. And some of it, I was like, they were talking about they were going to have all electric cars. And I just thought, man, the whole country's got electric cars, but then you got to produce electricity, which is going to take fossil fuels to make all that electricity for all these cars. And so I was just listening to it. I thought, man, these people, how do they get into this? And then I thought, well, they're worshiping. They worship Mother Earth. It's religion to them. I mean, they are serious about it, and they will tithe, they will sacrifice, they'll walk down the road.
Mother Nature, whoever that is, rules.
Right,
rules.
And so I made the point: if I worship the God that created it, I don't really have to worry about all the details. Yep. We try to, have a good, clean carbon footprint. That's a good idea. I don't want to go around destroying the earth, but at the same time, he says he made it and he'll remake it.
But still, once you go down that road, once you deny that God made this, and you deny this conscious system in your mind, and once you start going down the road, and you can use for an excuse that there's a lot of religious people who do not treat anybody guilty of sin the right way, so they use that for
That's another excuse.
Yeah, there are people who get up and hate homosexuals because of their. Well, that's not right.
No.
God loves everybody.
So do
your
we.
whole point, with what caused the controversy in your life was that this is something, that at a spirit of love, we all there's no difference in those types of behaviors as far as right or wrong. So we all meet under the umbrella of grace and forgiveness. But the only time I've ever been effective with people who have just declared that I just don't believe in God, whatever their excuse is, and it's usually the smarter individuals, the intellectuals. The only time I've ever had any success is I'm like, okay, so you're smart. And they're like, well, I got a bunch of letters behind my name. Yeah, okay, that means you're smart. And you're trying to get me to believe that you came from something dumb. And just the simple idea of that, they really have a hard time dealing with that. Because I'm like, well, if you're so smart, you're basing your whole lifestyle, your decision-making process, good and evil, on that you came from something dumb. I mean, if there's no intellect as an origin, how can something smart come from something dumb? They don't have an answer.
That's a good point.
They're like, because it flies in the face of everything that they're taught. Mm-hmm. To be smart, you got to have somebody smarter teaching you, and then you learn. But how did this happen? So that's when I move in and say, maybe what you think is making you smart is an illusion. Just having a bunch of meaningless facts or being able to do something based on, your knowledge.
So you're saying 122, although they claimed to be wise, they became fools.
Well, that verse is a powerful verse.
It's a powerful verse. All right, we're out of time.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.